Welcome everyone to the Center of Love. Ollie has asked me to do this. It's not my comfort zone, so please bear with me.
You do great.
Um, just wanted to go over our mission again. I think we've missed that a few of our weeks recently. Our mission is to gather with like-hearted individuals in community to suggest and share wisdom, healing, and love with each other in a world at large, to build bridges and bring people together in the name of the oneness and love. This, the Center of Love is important to me. I didn't realize how early I was involved in the whole process. I met Tracy, who's not here, and we connected pretty quickly, and it was within a week or two that I was coming here with her, and I didn't know how close it was to the beginning until they had their first anniversary, and I'm like, hold on, let me add that up. So it was very very interesting to meet people that wanted to talk about something besides the weather. Talk about some real subjects and what's the word I'm looking for? And actually have different opinions and actually be allowed to do so, and be able to speak them. So I was very happy to start coming to the Center of Love. I'm here to introduce Ollie today. I'm pretty sure everybody knows Ollie, but Ollie is one, if not the mastermind behind the Center of Love. He is a very generous person. I've gotten to know him quite a bit as I did join the board, thanks to Naomi. And it's been nice to get to know some of the players in the background, as I'm one of them. Ollie's going to talk about quite an interesting subject. Interestingly enough, he wanted me to tell him what to talk about, and that's just not my thing. So he did come up with a subject that I thought was quite interesting, exploring the beliefs of how we think we know it, or some people can come across as knowing everything. Yes, I have a coworker I call I know everything. So I'm familiar with that particular type of person. And I think it's interesting what he's going to be talking about the humble individual that sits in the background and doesn't know exactly what they're going to do with it. So, let's see. I'm going to make this short and sweet because that's the way I am. And because I know Ollie would like that extra time to talk about the subject, we will be going into a circle afterwards and talking about the subject, and then we'll come back for some closing remarks and have our day. But I'm looking forward to hearing Ollie speak about individuals, and hope you enjoy his speak.
Oh man, as a former Mr. Know-It-All, I can definitely relate. Tracy was supposed to be our lovely speaker today, but last minute changes of plans put me in the driver's seat. And as Barbara said, I was looking for a topic. I was hoping she was just going to tell me what to talk about, but no luck. So I had to go to the well and pick something that is familiar to me, something that's comfortable for me. And I figured, what could be more familiar and comfortable to me than the depths of my own ignorance? That's a topic that I'm very familiar with, intimately familiar. So I'll tell you a quick story. About 4 years ago, we hired a vice president for our national operations division, and he was doing a tour of our regional office here in Victoria, where I used to work. And so I had the pleasure of meeting him on his first day. And so he called me into the temporary office that he was using, and I sat down and we started engaging in small talk, just getting to know each other. He was a very approachable man, despite being high ranking in the corporate ladder. And so one thing that I came to learn about Jonathan is that he likes to throw curveballs at you. So he like brings your defenses down, and it's just like just a casual conversation, and then he'll throw like a weird question out of left field. And so this is what he did to me on his first day. He says, we're talking about our families and kids, and then he says, Oliver, what would you say is your biggest asset to the company? Now, I wasn't ready for an interview grade question like that, so without thinking, I just blurted out, my biggest asset, Jonathan, is that I know that I don't know anything. Now, telling your new big boss that you don't know anything probably isn't the best way to get off on the right foot with him if you want to get promoted or even keep your job. But I'm still working there, so obviously it's worked out for the better. Jonathan is a very clever guy, and he says, well, if you don't know anything, how do you know that you don't know anything? And then I was like, whoa. He was one step ahead of me, right? But what I told him was that when you know that you don't know anything, you can question everything, okay? And that's why it's an asset to know that you don't know, or at least that's why it's an asset for me. Now, how did I come to this realization that I know holy shit all about this life and the world and all of that fun stuff? Well, like many of you, I had an experience. It wasn't an intellectual realization that I didn't know anything. I actually experienced my ignorance firsthand, and in such a way that it was undeniable. I couldn't pretend that I knew, because I was presented with evidence to the contrary. I've talked about this event a little bit before. I call it my cubicle epiphany. I was sitting at work, working, and I had this tidal wave of bliss and happiness and awe and wonder, and I felt like I had just realized something profound and life-changing, but I couldn't put it into words, which of course led me to believe that maybe I was having some kind of mental breakdown. But I didn't just go with that. I actually did some research into it. I started to investigate, and what happened was I had this experience of like the purest happiness I had ever felt. And as someone who spent his teenage years and late 20s and mid 20s looking for happiness without finding it, I found it very strange that just sitting there in my cubicle with no external changes or external stimuli, I suddenly felt the most profound sense of contentment and serenity and happiness. And so what that did is it caused me to regard what I thought I knew with a little bit of skepticism, right? Because in the past, my understanding of happiness was I had to go and do certain things like buy a new car or get a promotion or acquire some new piece of jewelry or become a status symbol or. Happiness to me was always connected to external achievements, possessions, and so on. And so this was the proof that I was completely wrong about that, because nothing changed. My bank account was the same family, same house, same van, which I still drive, by the way, all those years later. Rusty Rosie, yeah, same. No, my material conditions were the exact same, but everything was new, everything was fresh, everything was different. And so that's when I realized, if I didn't even know what happiness was, what else have I been wrong about? What else have I been assuming to know, presuming to know, when in fact I didn't have a clue? So this led me to adopt this kind of position of what the Zen Buddhists call Shoshen, which is beginner's mind, assuming the mind of a beginner, right? Setting aside what you think you know, even if it's just temporary, and then going into these topics with completely fresh eyes, right? And there's great power in doing that, because when you presume to know, or at least when I presumed to know, it was impossible for me to learn. Because if you think you already know the answer, you're not going to go investigating or asking questions. It's kind of like freedom, which I think is a bit of a ploy that they play on us. If you think you're free, you're not going to try and achieve freedom, because you're already free, right? So by presuming to know, we close a lot of doors and we prevent ourselves from being open to all kinds of interesting, valid, and useful information, right? So this isn't anything new. I wasn't breaking any new ground, and I continued to do my research, and I stumbled upon many examples of this. It was old news, like most profound realizations are. Everything has already been kind of touched on these days. But one of the first examples that I came across in my readings is my good old friend Socrates, one of my favorite historical, mythological characters. Whether he was real or not, I don't know, but the story of Socrates is one of great inspiration, and it also cracks me up quite a bit, because here was a man who went to see the Delphic oracle, right? People from all over the world would go see this oracle to learn their fate, right? She would speak and she would predict the future, and she was always right. And so when Socrates went to see her, she said to him, "You're the wisest person on earth." And he was so stubborn and so aware of his own ignorance that he said, "Oh, that's impossible. I can't possibly be the wisest person on earth. And to prove it to you, I'm going to go talk to these other people who are way wiser than me, and I'm going to show you that they're wiser." And so this is what Socrates did. He went around Athens, and he would talk to tradespeople and craftspeople and politicians and farmers, and he would talk to just random people on the street, and he would ask them really, really easy questions, at least easy on the surface. Like, for example, what is goodness? What is truth? What is beauty? Clearly, everyone knows those things. I mean, they're such essential topics, essential qualities of life, that goodness, truth, and beauty, everyone must know what these things are. So he went around asking these types of questions, and then he would ask follow-up questions, and within a few minutes, his conversation partners would fall apart. Everything they thought they knew, they couldn't prove. It was all based on assumptions and unexamined notions about what life is and what it ought to be. And Socrates famously said, "The unexamined life is not worth living." Right? He learned this from firsthand experience. He went around asking people, and they didn't know anything either. The difference is that Socrates was aware that he didn't know anything, whereas these other people didn't know anything. They thought they did, and they were very confident with what they thought they knew, until Socrates did his thing, asked a couple questions, and then all of a sudden, the answers fall apart. Now, it should be noted that Socrates was not very well liked for doing this. Nobody likes to be shown their own ignorance in this manner, especially when he's asking you these like tricky questions and you're answering confidently, and then next thing you know, you're like, "Whoa, wait a second, that doesn't make sense. My own beliefs don't make sense," right? So he was, tried and executed, but that's besides the point. I think the important thing is that Socrates revealed to us that even the most basic and essential concepts, the most central ideas in our lives, are a bit vague and ambiguous. And when we think we know, and we go about with that certainty and that arrogance and that confidence, we set ourselves up for unnecessary pain and suffering. And so I do actually think that not knowing is a power. There is great power in knowing that you don't know, right? This kind of relates to a diagram that you may have seen in the past. It's like 3 circles. The little circle in the middle is what you know, and then there's a bigger circle around it, and it says what you know you don't know, right? Known unknowns. And then there's an even bigger circle around it of indeterminate size, and that one is the stuff you don't know you don't know. Being aware of this is very important. And to illustrate this, I've got a couple of stories from scientific history. So for example, there was a mystery, a known unknown, right? Back in the 1930s, there were these things called nebula, right? Astronomers, not astrologers, astronomers. They were observing the night sky, and they were seeing these blobs of light. And they were like, "What are these things? Let's call them nebula." And they had theories on what nebula might be. Like, some of them thought that they were like diffuse stars that were like kind of blobby, or maybe a cloud of a gas in space. And so they knew that they didn't know, what nebula were. They knew about nebula, but they just didn't know what they were exactly, right? Until a fella by the name of Edwin Hubble got his hands on the most powerful telescope at the time, which was located in California, the Mount Hooker telescope. And Edwin Hubble, equipped with this powerful state-of-the-art telescope, was able to study nebula like no one before him had. And very quickly, what Hubble realized was that these nebula were not stars or gas clouds, but they were entire friggin' galaxies. So before this, astronomers thought that the entire universe was contained in our Milky Way, that we were an island universe. So imagine the shift from feeling that this galaxy is all there is to realizing that it is one of billions. The size of the universe went from being this small to this large, right? So that's an example of a known unknown. The mystery of nebula, what are they, right? But by discovering an answer to the question, it remodeled everything we thought we knew previously. We thought we knew that this was all there was. The Milky Way is the entire universe. Suddenly, we had to go back and reevaluate our model of the universe based on this one discovery, right? So anytime you think you know something, remember Edwin Hubble and the size of the universe and how quickly things can change when a new piece of information is introduced. Now, the second story that I want to share with you is from a little bit further back. It's in the 1800s, and it's a fellow by the name of William Herschel. And he was running a beam of light through a prism to break it off into its separate color strands. And he was measuring the temperature of each band of color, right, to see if the light gets warmer or cooler as you're measuring the different colors of the light. And when he was done doing this, he set his thermometer next to, like, the outside of the band of light where there was no more light, right? He put it down and then he walked away. And then when he came back, he picked up the thermometer and it was hotter than the hottest band of light. But the thermometer wasn't in the light. But of course, as we all know now, the visible spectrum of light is not the full spectrum. And there's something called infrared, which is invisible to the naked eye. And guess where he placed his thermometer? In the infrared light. And so, by complete accident, Mr. Herschel discovered infrared light. He wasn't looking for it. It wasn't on his radar. He didn't even know that he didn't know about infrared light. But he accidentally discovered it just by putting his thermometer in the right place at the right time. So not only are there a bunch of things we know we don't know, there's even more stuff we don't know we don't know. And I feel that for some people that can be stressful or anxiety-inducing. We don't like the unknown. We want to be certain. We want stability. We want something fixed that isn't going to wiggle around and change all the time, right? We want that sense of stability. But what I found after my cubicle epiphany was actually the opposite. Because when these tidal waves of pure bliss washed over me, they swept all of my beliefs and opinions and expectations and judgments clean out. It was like, imagine the floods that are happening or that happened in Toronto. Imagine a flood like that comes through your house and sweeps every piece of furniture, every dish, every fork, every article of clothing out. Your house is completely bare, empty, and clean. That's how I felt after this experience. And so rather than feel unstable and anxious, I felt absolutely liberated. Turns out what I thought I knew wasn't protecting me or supporting me. It was imprisoning me. And suddenly, I was free. Mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. I was free to question everything. Even the things that I thought were so obvious I never even bothered to look at them. And the first question that I pursued was, what is happiness? Because this experience caused me to re-examine and reevaluate my concept of happiness. Previously, I thought, yeah, if I get a better job and I keep buying bigger houses and if I keep doing all the things that people tell me, I'm going to be happy one day. But it was like running on a treadmill and not really going anywhere. Or it was like if I managed to grab onto the thing that I wanted, like sand, slipping through your fingers. You have it, and then all of a sudden, it's gone. So this experience led me to completely reevaluate what happiness is, what it means to be happy, how to go about being happy, because I realized that your material conditions are not necessarily connected to your level of contentment and fulfillment and happiness in life. That was life-changing for me. So, that's why I think some of the most powerful words we can utter is, I don't know. I think I know. I have some theories, but I don't know for certain. That way, the back door's always open, and when new evidence presents itself, you're not trapped holding on to a point of view or an opinion or a belief that is harmful or that isn't serving your best interests. So, what I would like to ask you all as a prompt, and we don't have to go that deeply into it, but something to consider. Can you think of a time in your life where you experienced something that made you question or change a core belief or something about which you were very, very, very confident or certain beforehand? Right? Like I was certain that I knew what happiness was. It wasn't even a question because I thought I knew until I experienced my cubicle epiphany. So it doesn't have to be big or profound. It could be something very simple. But what I think is any time we change our minds about something, especially something that we are adamant about, that is a cause for great celebration. Because it shows and it proves that we are capable of changing our minds and of evolving and of widening our perspectives. And that's what we're trying to do here, my friends. When we share our stories together, when we share after the talk, we're trying to enlarge our perspectives. We're trying to add more information so that we can see a bigger and bigger picture of the world and of other people and ourselves in it.